a place for conversations. SDAQ&A. You're safe to speak your truth. Common ground, shared beliefs with lots of room for disagreement. Tell us all what you believe and let us see if we can challenge you. From all paths coming here to share their stories. Some have left this global church, some remain and defend her. Where are you on the path? Does Elenne still appeal to you? SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. 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 Oh, SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. SDAQ&A, you You love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same. Will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same
And God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another SDAQ&A. Great to have you all here watching. Now, today's program, where I am replaying the incredible interview that I did with Elenne Ford, Season 2, Episode 33, is sponsored by J. LeBron McBride and his book, Coming Back to Faith. Easy to find. You just go on to the internet and type in one of your search engines for lebronmcbride.com and you can find his amazing book. So thank you very much to LeBron McBride, and who's a PhD. He knows his stuff, and Coming Back to Faith is a really, really great read. I highly recommend that, excuse me, that you go and check it out at lebronmcbride.com. Thank you very much for sponsoring today. I would not be able to do these shows without sponsorship like this and without your help. So if you are happy to lean in and go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music, just throw me a couple of dollars. That would really help me continue the program. Now, over the next few weeks, I will be probably not doing the show. It looks like, I think, the 6th or 7th of January, I will be officially kicking off again at this time. Depending on a few things, there are 3 shows that I really want to do. So they may randomly just kind of go live if I've got some spare time. But I'm going to take a break, enjoy my daughter's holidays, and going to really just kick back and enjoy being a dad and a father, and enjoy my little family. But there are 3 things I do want to talk about, and I may randomly have some time to do a program. One, I want to do a program on where are we at with the unions and SPD with women's ordination. They will say one thing publicly and a different thing behind the scenes. That's what worries me. I don't care where you land on your theological understanding of women's ordination. I especially respect those of you who have examined the data and drawn your own conclusions. I respect that. This is not about some kind of white knight coming in and trying to save the day. This is me simply pointing out that when leadership tells us one thing behind the scenes, but then toes the line publicly for worldwide leadership reasons, for keeping their jobs safe, that really annoys me. And I think it annoys lots of you as well. So I want to do a show on that. I also want to do a program on this recent Ty Gibson video that he's done. I want to be careful how I speak here because I like Ty and David Asherik. But essentially, this is what I think, that Ty Gibson, David Asherik, and their movement Light Bearers is essentially saying that they do believe in the more traditional Adventist teachings, but that it needs to be repackaged in a more pleasant way to appeal to the world. He's essentially saying that, yeah, Adventists claim to have 22 million members. In reality, there's about 6 to maybe 10 actually functioning and engaging and practicing as Seventh-day Adventist members. And that's pretty interesting. But his theory is that I think, he says that we need to get back to Jesus and promote this message better, because at the moment it's having zero impact. I agree with him. But when they, and this is my opinion, I could be totally wrong, but when they set up here in North New South Wales conference and became very influential in the conference, taking leadership positions or influencing leadership decisions and positions, they definitely were able to demonstrate how they package Adventism to appeal to young people, and droves of young people joined up with their Arise movement. However, upon closer inspection, as coffee was banned from North New South Wales Conference and various Adventist pillars and standards were brought into play, one realized that it was really just dressing up. And people have disagreed with me on this. Fine, I don't mind. I could be wrong. But having spent 30 years in North New South Wales and seeing the impact of these guys on the conference and totally shifting the focus of a progressive Adventism that we were introducing, to see that kind of unravel, was interesting. So the third program I want to do dovetails into that. There are so many people lately saying, what? How on earth can Adventists draw the conclusion of last generation theology from Adventist doctrine? How is this possible? And I laugh when I hear Adventists saying that. Adventist progressives are shocked. And I'm like, really? Have you not read any Ellen G. White literature? Have you not read Adventist source material? Have you not looked deeply at the true teachings and doctrines of Adventism of Ellen G. White? LGT, SDA, they're married together. They're marinated in the same juice. The whole point of Adventism is to have a last generation of people existing on the planet at one time, vindicating God, proving Satan's claim wrong that you can't keep the commandments. It's all about last generation and having one generation fulfilling that apparent Christ's directive and gospel. So that dovetails in with my Ty Gibson talk as well. So I do want to do 3 programs, and they might just drop randomly over the next few weeks, but officially we will begin again on the 6th and 7th of January, around that time. So what are your thoughts? I'm interested. I believe that the progressive Adventists, the Fordites, and those who lean to a wide variety of Adventist-style categories and on the spectrum of Adventism, I believe that their new theology unravels the traditional Adventists like Mark Finley, like Ted Wilson, like the majority of Seventh-day Adventists in the world. The progressive Adventist theology is new. It grew out of questions on doctrine in the late 50s. It is new. It is a new theology. It is a different theology to traditional Adventism. Traditional Adventists do not want the new theology. So you proponents of the new progressive liberal theology, you need to wake up and realize you are not going to change the Adventist church. Anyone who tries, as we're going to chat to Elenne Ford today, will realize they will get the Des Ford treatment in one way or another. And you guys need to just wake up and realize that you are not going to reclaim anything. You're not going to revise anything. Whenever you try, you're marginalized, suppressed, cancelled, kicked out. Forget it. Start something that embraces your theology. I was a progressive Adventist new theology guy. I spent 30 years here in North New South Wales promoting that kind of Adventism, and realized at the end of it all that I had only undermined true Adventism, real Adventism, Ted Wilson Adventism. But there are so many people within the Adventist church filling the vacuum. Ty Gibson is an independent ministry filling the vacuum. Doug Batchelor, these guys are all filling the vacuum. Conrad Vine, Ron Kelly, they're filling this vacuum of poor, weak leadership. And progressive, liberal, academic, scholarly Adventists quietly sit in their little Sabbath school rooms and pontificate about how Adventism is going to be reclaimed one day. No, never. Not going to happen. Start your own thing. It's a beauty. I love the SDA gem. Go for it. But you're not going to change the mainstream. The mothership Adventism is LGT. It is traditional conservative Ellen G. White, vindicating God. You cannot, what's that saying? Put lipstick on a pig. You cannot make Adventism appealing to the general public because its core doctrine is blasphemous. Its core doctrine is that the atonement didn't finish at the cross. There is ongoing work to be done. That something happened supernaturally in 1844 when the Bible never predicted it. The Bible never said anything was going to be coming later on that would introduce a new special directive for the last days to vindicate God. There's none of that. That is not in the Bible at all. It is a total fabricated, reverse engineered religion and movement that, while can be very satisfying at a cultural, happy Sabbath, let's enjoy our haystacks, pot lunch level, it is a dangerous minefield. Bring people in and say, walk through the valley of Adventism. Someone's going to lose a leg here and there. It's not a safe place to bring people into or birthed into. It is not a safe place. So anyway, that's my little morning rant. And I'll read what you guys have written in the comments. Are we live? Are we even live? Boy, I hope so. After all that. Boy, I ranted for 10 minutes then. Okay, so great to have you here. Let's get on with the program. As I mentioned, we are sponsored today by Dr. LeBron McBride and his amazing book, Coming Back to Faith. I highly recommend that you guys go and check it out online at lebronmcbride.com. If you'd like to sponsor, particularly season 2, get in touch with me and we can make that happen. It's only $150 and you sponsor a show that is going to be out there for years and years and years. Every time someone watches one of these shows that is sponsored, they will see the link to your content that you'd like to direct people to. Okay, without further ado, on with the show as we go back in time. And where's the button? Where's the button? You'd better add that, Rochelle, to SDAQ&A bingo. Where's the button? There it is. Back in time. So those listening to the podcast, I'm speaking to you from 2025, but now we will bring you back into 2020, 5 years ago. Des Ford, Glacier View series, season 2, episode 33, with Gillian Ford. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to SDA Q&A. My very special guest today is Elenne Ford. Nice to have you here, Elenne.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It doesn't matter how you say
it. Well, because I remember when I got your dad to come and talk for us down here for one of my I think it was the very first SDA Q&A program and our church service in the morning. And I was about to announce you from the stage, and I thought, is it Ellen or Elenne or Elene? I thought, so I might have gone, hi and welcome, Elenne Ford.
And was that 2015?
That was it that year where you
February.
guys came down and
Yeah.
February 6, 2000. Was it 15?
5 years, over 5.5 years ago.
Incredible. And what an amazing day that was. You know, of course, I'd seen your dad, met him maybe once or twice, but to really kind of spend the day hearing his service, his Q&A in the afternoon was just a fabulous, fabulous experience. I really valued it.
It was fun for me because I drove him down in our Winnebago from the Sunshine Coast. So we had a great time on the road together.
Oh, that's beautiful. Very
Yeah.
bonding.
Yeah, it was really, really special. So we'd stop in parks for our meals, and I'd sleep in the Winnebago and he'd be in a hotel and I'd be parked out the front. It was quite fun.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I remember on the afternoon meeting, and people, I'll put the link to the live afternoon meeting and the morning meeting as well. It's on YouTube. The afternoon meeting's got over 8,500 views. I just checked the other day. I thought it was maybe a couple of thousand, but it's just heaps more now. And at the end of the interview, because we'd had a problem with the foldback, you sat next to him on the stage so that you could hear people asking the questions, and you would then tell him the questions and anything he didn't pick up on. And I just remember noticing this beautiful rapport that you had with him. And I remember at the end of the program, I said, if my daughters grow up half as loving towards their dad as you are to Des, I'll be a happy man. It was just beautiful to see that kind of connection and love you have for him. And pre this conversation, you mentioned a little bit about your dad from the perspective of being a wonderful inspiration to you from not a God-fearing man, that's not the word I'm looking for, but from a beautiful person that presented the gospel to you. And I'm just wondering if you can share a little bit about that side of Des, the father that gave you that gift.
Yeah, so from as soon as we were born, we were read to by both of our parents and read classics, like the Narnia series and Pilgrim's Progress and stories of missionaries, and we had family worship every day where scripture was read and my father would pray, and on one evening a week, usually a Friday night, he'd play his pedal organ and sing, and he wasn't a good singer. So I grew up surrounded by the Word, the Bible, and the Gospel. And of course, I went to hear him preach every week. And, my interest was in ironing a handkerchief for him and telling him that he had to take the handkerchief out that I'd ironed and use it while he was in the pulpit. So pretty pathetic. So
That's lovely.
I was devoted to myself and having fun, and I used to push all his buttons. So I think why I love him so much is that I put him through so much. And they say that whoever's been forgiven much, it loves much. And so I stretched him to the limit.
Wow.
And he continued to show Christ to me. So the most memorable, the earliest and most memorable example of that would be when I was about 9, and my mother asked me to sweep the kitchen floor, and to my shame, I said to her, "Do it yourself."
Right.
So it was a cheeky little thing, and I got sent to my father's library, and Dad said to me, "You don't know how much you hurt your mother and me when you speak to us like that." And I can still remember what I said. I went, "Ho, ho," like I made that sound, like, yeah, pull the other one, who gives a stuff, sort of thing. And my dad said, "I'm going to take your punishment for you today." He said, "You must give me a spanking on my hand, And there was just no way I was going to touch my father. So he knew how to deal with my stubborn, strong will. And he just held his hand out there for me to slap. And there was no way I was going to slap my father. And there was no way he was going to back down. So there was a bit of a battle of the wills there for a while, but I was in tears. And in the end, he had to settle for me just placing my hand on his hand. And not long after that, my brother and I were squabbling over the washing up in the kitchen, and we heard this massive crash. And our father had been painting the eaves of our old timber house, and the ladder had given away, and he'd fallen to the concrete path underneath a long way, and there was blood and stuff. And I remember thinking that he again was taking the punishment for me for the way I was speaking to my brother. So he exemplified Christ. We can't save ourselves. We're incapable of doing the right thing so often, but we can look to a Savior who's taken those sins upon himself. And so he incarnated that for me. And he was, I could never unseat his calm assurance that God was in control. He didn't have to be in control. He just exhibited that deep shalom peace that I was in God's hands and that he didn't have to overstress. So I felt I could tell him anything, and I did. I would use him as a sounding board and tell him some pretty confronting things as I got older. And he would never berate me. He would just grieve. I could see the grief in his face sometimes when I'd tell him things. And I knew that he would just pray. So it took a long time before I became interested in God. I had to work out that life doesn't work any other way, and that Scripture actually has a roadmap for life. But he let me work that out myself. So for that, I'm eternally grateful that he modeled that for me, because I think we learn more from people modeling for us rather than being told.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And you and I have talked a bit about where you're also finding out, you said there for yourself, he was creating an environment where you could be yourself, be authentic, ask him anything, question, and he was modeling there that he wanted you to be your own person and to grow into the fullness of yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes he would say to me, Peter, he'd say, Elenne, only life is going to teach you. And he would shake his head with pain and grief, but he would let me know that my choices weren't going to lead me to a very good place. And he was so right, but I had to work that out for myself. And he used to say to me, you can't put an old head on young shoulders, only life is going to teach you. And he'd shake his head. And he was there when I got to the point where my life was really bad, and I felt like, well, am I going to think about God, or am I going to jump off a cliff? You know, life came to that choice, and he was there for me then.
Yeah. And I bet he didn't say, oh, I told you so.
No. He gave me a Bible, 1987, and he asked me whether I would read it for 5 minutes a day. And he said, anything you like, open it up, just choose a verse, read it for 5 minutes a day. Would you do that for me?
How old were you, did you say?
I was about 32. So I was born in 55.
Yeah.
So I'm nearly 65. And so he gave me this Bible, and he wrote in it, this book and the man of this book is the answer to life, or words to that effect. And just asked me to read it for 5 minutes a day. And so I started doing that for his sake, because of what he had borne for me, what he'd put up with for me. And because I sort of saw in his life that something amazing was working for him that I didn't see in many places. So he lost the love of his life, my mother. They'd always walk hand in hand every day. You'd never heard a raised voice or a cross word. They were so loving towards one another. And he'd lost her, to cancer at a very young age. And he used to lie awake at night listening to see if she was still breathing. And yet he was able to care for us 3 children, still preach, still teach theology at college, and had a really busy life. So I saw lots of hard things happen to him, and it didn't rock his boat. He remained steadfast of the confidence that God was in control. So modeling that for me was a big help. And so when I had that choice as to which way I was going to go with my life, here's an example of how taking the harder route and denying yourself on what you want and doing what God calls you to do, even if it doesn't make sense, I could see how that was the right way. But it took a long time. So starting reading the Bible in 87, it wasn't until April 95 that I really became a Christian. And even after that, it's been a slow journey because I have a very strong will and a very strong won't.
Yeah, I like that. Like, I see that in my girls, 6 and 7, and I foster that. I like that rebellious nature, because it means you're thinking, and you're gonna find who you are. And
Yeah.
if you can just create that environment of safety around that.
Yes. Yeah, so he let me explore, and I'd say to him, Dad, I don't want to go to school anymore. And he said, well, that's okay. You don't have to. I'm sure you get an interesting job as a secretary. And I'd say, I'm not going to be a secretary. That's far too boring. But do you know what I mean? His ego didn't depend on what happened to me.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't need me to be anyone.
Yes.
He let me be who God wanted me to be.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I remember, you're mentioning your mother passing there. And I would have been the mid-90s, I used to play music with a local just down the road here, and he would have been in his 60s then. I won't mention names or anything, but for some reason we were chatting about some controversy in the church that was happening at the time, and we got on to talking about your dad. And so this is like 20 years ago now, I guess. So he told me the story of when his wife was dying of cancer, was the same time as your mother was ill, and Des would come and visit him and his wife, and he would go, but you're and also be looking after your mum as well. And he just felt it was such a gracious act that he'd never forgotten of how loving your father was to people in the community,
He had deep compassion for people.
Yeah, yeah.
Hugely deep compassion, yeah.
And whenever I'd met him, and particularly that day that we were speaking of, that he came down and did those 2 talks for me, and also later going up to meet him and do the first 3 interviews on the podcast, you'd just meet him, and the way he'd sort of shake your hand and look into you and say your name and then sit back, and the first thing he'd be say, how are you going? I'm going to turn it back around onto the person he was. He just had that compassionate nature about him. And look, I'm sure he was as human as, of course, he'd be the first to admit it, as the rest of us. But he did have this ability to kind of almost discipline, because a lot of people talk about love and let's put Jesus first and love and everything, but as soon as they have one little problem or one little criticism against them, the true colours come out. Right. And I think that requires a bit of discipline to learn how to love each other.
Yeah, that's right. My dad used to say love is not a feeling. Love is wanting what's best for someone. And we would always know as kids if there was a question mark over someone, because my father would say things like, but God loves him, and only God knows, or, that would be as close as he'd get to ever criticizing anyone in our home. So he would not speak badly about people, because he said, we don't walk in their shoes. We don't know what they've been through. We don't know what wounds they're carrying. Yeah. So he never spoke badly about people.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad's been the same, actually. Some people, people say it as a lip service that, he never spoke ill of anyone. But I think you and I can actually make that claim with our fathers. I've literally never heard Dad speak ill of someone.
Yeah.
And even when your dad was passionately talking about the way he was treated at Glacier View, he would still say, but you know what, they're humans, they're almost there, but for the grace of God go I, kind of an
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
I remember in the afternoon meeting and the morning service, I loved that he would get passionate about this stuff, and even not frustrated or angry, but that this was a meaningful thing, and people should be accountable. Like he wasn't just this weak person going, oh, let's
No.
just forgive everybody. And he's got an angst and a passion there that really shone through, but was ultimately nestled and encased within this beautiful teaching of Christ.
I
To
think you've raised something really important there, because there is love,
mm,
but there's also right and wrong.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he had a very clear sense of right and wrong.
yeah,
He had a very tender conscience.
yeah,
So he would have righteous indignation about things, but
yes,
he would express it in a loving way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's great because that's authentic. A lot of people you hear talk from the pulpit are speaking this kind of, gospel talk, and it's all nice and geez, and you kind of think, I want to see the real person. I
Yeah.
want to see the warts and all person.
Yeah.
And it's possible to have people be very authentic and real and express righteous indignation without coming across as judgmental and hurtful. And and he really, a lot of people say that about your dad, and it's a lovely thing to hear. Just briefly, and I don't want to kind of go there deeply, but I know that there are other people watching that have been through similar kind of pain. My mother lost her dad when she was only about 2.5 or 3. He was an Adventist minister, taken way too soon at a train accident.
Oh.
And I know that looking, as the son, looking on the impacts of her elder brother, who was maybe 9 or 11 when that happened, and to her mother and the rest of the family, the impact that had. I think that shouldn't be lost sight of in this story. What year did your mother pass?
April 24th of April 1970,
Yeah,
just 2 days after she turned 40.
yeah,
But she got cancer when she was 32, primary cancer, and then it came back, secondary cancer. It was May 28,
mm,
1967, that the secondary cancer came back.
yeah,
So the last 3 years of her life were really, really, really hard, and
yeah,
really hard on the children.
yeah,
I was so I was 12, nearly not 11 when it came back.
mm,
But my younger brothers, one was 9 and the other one was 1,
yeah,
because we were supposed to bake Luke a cake for his birthday on the 28th of April 1967, and we were supposed to make it the night before.
mm,
And my mother would never change a commitment to me that we were going to make a cake, but she did. And I couldn't understand why. And I was crying and throwing a tantrum because we're not making this cake. But she was really ill, and next morning started vomiting and basically didn't stop until she died. So
yeah,
I always remember that it came on the night before his first birthday. So it was very hard on the 2 boys,
yes,
particularly. I think deep wounds that
yeah,
only God can heal.
yeah. And I think, in this lifetime may never heal. That kind of, you can cope, you can learn to move on, but I've seen that impact in a lifetime, and it's very. I think it's important not to talk about, to sensationalize it or to bring it up as a drama, but to couch it in, this is your life, this is your family, this is the hurts, and they'd call it post-traumatic stress now, that then led into the 70s, led into your father wanting to bring assurance to Christians, to Adventists, with what he'd been discovering in the Bible and in his research. And maybe there's a link there, in losing someone, in going through struggles. You want to find calm. You want to find safety in the arms of the Creator. You want to find assurance in eternity. I think maybe, and I might be wrong, but maybe that created a bit of a bed for the growth of his desire to find this righteousness by faith, to find this assurance in Jesus, that led to some of the beautiful findings and teachings that came from that terrible experience.
I'm sure that's right, because you're right, Peter. It was very traumatic. Us kids used to count how many times she would vomit in a day, and she wasn't eating, so there was nothing to come up much, you know. And we counted 40 times some days, and we'd take it in turns to take away the bowl, wash it, and bring her back a fresh one. And to watch that sort of suffering and watch her lose so much weight and see her smiling and caring and being thoughtful for us, that must have killed him. So he had to put his theology into practice in order to survive that. So it became real for him more than ever, that we can find intimacy and support and love and comfort and peace through our shepherd father, our eternal sovereign God, who knows and who cares and who puts things right and who makes it somehow bearable for all of us going through those times. There were little grace notes in all of our lives that made it that much more bearable than it could have been.
And to then kind of discover this assurance and go, look, I think I've got something here that can bring a little bit of joy to the Adventist community, to be treated with such a kind of political knockdown, and that must have been very difficult for him to take personally, and for you to kind of look on as well, to go, look, 10 years ago he's gone through this massive trauma, and now he's being faced with another massive trauma. What, as a daughter, what were your thoughts as you noticed, even from 1976 when they had the
Concerned Brethren?
No, the
Palmdale?
Palmdale meetings where I think your dad was involved with, and they were going to try and find, don't end these meetings until you've come up with the answers, kind of thing, and the minutes were lost. That one, and then with the CBs coming out around even the mid 70s, to his amazing October 27, 1979 PUC forum, which took the world by storm with this kind of new light of a possible shift in perhaps the more legalistic approach to Adventism. As a daughter, can you kind of lead us through some of those key events of how you were watching him and how you saw the impact on him emotionally through that time?
So I think the hardships that he suffered started when he was born. So I was aware of huge difficulties, from my memories with family members when they would visit, and challenges that he had right from the very start. So I think that's why he was excited as a teenager to find the gospel in Scripture, because it turned him from being someone who could have easily been depressed and very glum about how life was panning out for him. I think that it gave him a rock solid foundation to his life. And so the more life threw at him that was difficult, the more he would press into the Lord, so that we would just be amazed that he didn't buckle under criticism. He wasn't crippled by loss. Bad news didn't scare him. He would, like even in the last year of his life, when he'd have to get a big long needle put into his eyes because some drops had melted away his corneas, and he had to have a cornea transplant at nearly 90, and these big injections of anesthetic going in, all sorts of terrible things. He'd say to me, Elenne, God knew this before I was born. It's part of the plan. He'll give me the strength to get through. And so he never railed against it. He had this peace about him. And that's been there ever since I can remember him. And my memories go back to when I was 3 and 4 of him being an absolute rock, of him being a firm foundation, that in fact life isn't scary and that we can step out in confidence knowing the Lord's got us. And yeah, so he modeled that for me going right back, and nothing changed. Life kept coming at him and hard things happened, but it didn't change. If anything, it just made him closer to the Lord.
I like that kind of strength. I think that's another good modelling that I think people need to remember throughout the Glacier View and post-Glacier View era, where he was almost in a way modelling a strength that could have been picked up by a lot of the folk at the time. So tell us a little bit more. By 1979, how old were you then?
So when so I turned 24 in 79.
Right.
Late towards the end of 79. So when the forum talk happened, that was
So you're now at an age where you're really grasping what's going on, and in many ways. Tell us some of your memories of that talk. So you were there at the meeting?
I wasn't at the talk. I arrived back in California in November to live and work in San Francisco. So I know I was with Dad when he got the news that he was going to be stood down from the college and sent to Washington, D.C. So that impacted me in that. One of the big reasons for me moving over there was to be closer, because I was spending a fortune on phone ringing him. I think some years I'd spend $10,000 a year because, he was my go-to person, my mentor. He was the person I would process. I'm an external processor, so I'd need to process decisions with him, and he wouldn't try to influence me, but I would really like to process
sounding
them
board.
with him. Yeah, so I spent a lot of money trying to keep in touch and get his wisdom. That's what I was looking for, his wisdom. So it impacted me because he went. So we got the news. I was with him when he got the news that he'd be moving to Washington, D.C. He was happy that the issue that he'd raised was being taken seriously, because he'd been trying for years on various committees to do it behind the scenes and it wasn't getting anywhere. So now he goes public, but only at the request and only on the basis that there would be immunity to speak at a forum about these issues. And he said, look, you sure you want me to talk about it? Because this is going to create waves. And he was assured it was going to be okay.
Who would have been the people that were assuring him of that?
The forum people, I guess.
Do you remember who, not naming names or anything, but just who were the kind of leaders of that time?
I just thought that the forum meetings had immunity and it was a safe place to explore theological questions and things. But I know Dad cautioned them against it, and we probably knew there was going to be some fallout when they had to change rooms for the meeting several times to get a room big enough because people kept flooding in. So I think there was more than 1,000 there. And then various people sent tapes around the world, so that sort of heightened it. But so I was in California when Dad got the news that he'd be stood down and sent to Washington, D.C. to write up a dissertation, which he did, as you know, over the next 6 months. So I was working in San Francisco and I ended up going back to Australia because I wasn't going to follow him to Washington, D.C. I lived there as a child and it didn't hold anything for me. So I just went home and I went back to Australia. So from then on through Glacier View, it was just phone calls and letters that I had in terms of contacts. I wasn't there or part of it.
That's for the 79 forum.
Yeah. I wasn't at the forum and I wasn't there for Glacier View. No. I was only there for a little time at the end of 79 and early 80, and then I went back to Australia.
When you, I didn't realise that the move after the 79 talk was a step down. Like it was, I just thought it was like, oh, cool. Would you like to go here and dig a little deeper for us and come back with something in writing? But you're saying it was actually pretty much we want to kind of just remove Des a little bit from this position.
Because he was speaking 3 or 4 times a month to churches around the United States as well.
Just going to pause there for a moment as we start to get deep into Glacier View, Des Ford influence. Just to thank very much LeBron McBride for sponsoring today's program. I really appreciate him doing so, because it's that kind of sponsorship means that I can continue on with doing this, presenting this kind of content. So thank you very much to LeBron McBride, and you can go to his website, LeBron McBride. You can see it on the screen there, LeBronMcBride.com for those listening on the podcast. And you can have a look at his book, Coming Back to Faith. So thank you very much, LeBron, for sponsoring today's program. Really appreciate it. And now back to the scheduled program.
Well as teaching theology. So yes, I understood it as being stood down on leave with pay to write a defense for his position.
Okay.
And he welcomed the opportunity, and he was really glad that they were taking it seriously. So there was absolutely no sense of dread or nervousness, or
Right.
It just impacted my little brother because he had to be left behind in California to finish his schooling while my stepmother and father went to Washington, D.C.
That's Luke.
Luke,
How old would Luke have been at that point?
So Luke was born in 1966, and so he would have been 13.
So,
13, 14.
So tell us a little bit about so that's 6 months that he did that, the famous 991-page document that none of the Glacier View people probably read. I don't mean that disrespectfly, but...
No, you're right, a lot didn't. By their own admission, I'm told.
Were you a fly on the wall at all with any of that kind of writing? Did he talk to you a little bit about it during that time?
Because I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't the slightest bit interested in the issues.
Interesting.
Not the slightest bit.
So you
I knew that I knew how hard he worked, and how, because I'd lived with him all those years. I knew he got up at 2:00 in the morning, and he would often joke with us at breakfast that he'd written half a book or 6 articles, before daylight, So I knew that he knew what he was talking about, and he'd be able to write a good defense. So I wasn't the slightest bit worried.
At later on in your life, did you kind of revisit that book and read it, and then think about the time period?
Yeah, no, I've never been interested in the issue, unfortunately.
Interesting.
I know why it's important.
Yeah.
That there be no such thing. That I know why it's important that he went into battle, and I agree with that. But I wasn't interested in the whys or wherefores of it, because it just seemed totally ridiculous to me, quite frankly, that anyone could get 1844 out of Scripture. I mean, and I was really glad that he was trying to champion it, because I could see how it would undermine people's gospel assurance that they were right with God right now. I could see how that doctrine, if you could even call it a doctrine, could challenge people's assurance and undermine it. So I thought it was great that he went in to bat, but I wasn't interested in what their reasons were for it.
I'm a bit the same. I find myself talking about it a lot, particularly in this series, but I don't believe anything happened in 1844, and I can well see how people, as I did as a child, had nightmares over the thought of the ramifications of the teaching or ideology or doctrine or whatever we call it, the dogma of 1844, the investigative judgment, the version of the sanctuary. I find it very difficult to find, like you say, it supported in the Bible, and B, how people can defend that we're just misunderstanding it if we think it causes fear. I think
I know people. Yeah, I know people who've experienced fear, adults experiencing fear. But fortunately, I was never brought up with that doctrine. I was always brought up with the truth of what Scripture meant. So I always thought it was a bit odd.
Yeah.
I found it a bit embarrassing, really.
Yeah.
That they would bring, and it felt to me like it could have been driven by a need to be different, special, exclusive. Like it felt like there could be some identity issue up in the reason for it. And it's probably the fact that it's been so hard to dislodge could be some support for that.
Yeah, well, it is. The investigative judgment, particularly, is the only distinctive Adventist doctrine.
I listened to Tim Keller recently, and he said something very interesting on this topic. He said that whenever an issue impacts our identity, our worth as a person, our ego, our self-esteem, whatever word you want to use, that we lose the ability to be objective and to make, we lose wisdom. And he gave an example. He said there's a man who told Keller himself that his identity was based on being a great writer. And this man noticed that he lost the ability to assess his own writing because it had to be great every time or he would disappear into a puddle of water.
Yeah.
So when anything's connected to our identity, we don't make wise decisions, and we usually need a coach or a counselor to help us see reality. So I wonder whether that's the same for an organization and a denomination that gets its identity from somewhere, whether it loses its ability to be wise and to be objective.
That's fascinating. I'd love to explore that more. I might get you to send a link to that, because I've found I'm the opposite of that. Like if someone criticizes me, early on at a young age I rallied and prickled against it. But I remember in my mid-20s going, hang on, they might be right. And hang on, that actually probably was my fault. And then kind of enjoying deconstructing myself. But I also found quite, at that young age, enjoying chatting to people about their beliefs and ideas and how they could defend them. Not to put them on the spot, but I just like the idea of someone being able to defend their belief. But when you say what you've said then, and it's really a little light's gone on in my head, if people have that challenged, you're actually almost shaming them or humiliating them, which I have not intended to do, but it explains why I've discovered that liberals and conservative Adventists, when I've asked some questions, have kind of prickled at it. And I see now that I need to explore that a bit more, because some people might just be asking because they're interested in why people believe things and how they defend it. But if it's wrapped up with your identity, you're actually challenging who they are as a person. And so if a system...
Just excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
It's cancelled. I don't have to go out. Sorry.
So if a system reacts like that, I don't think it's a good thing. But if human individuals react like that, I perhaps need to be a little bit more cautious of how I kind of challenge people's ideas and beliefs. That's a fascinating thing you've said there. You'll have to share that link maybe, and I can look more into it.
Yeah, be really happy to.
Because when I interviewed Lyndon Rogers, he's two interesting things. Well, he said a heap of interesting things. It's a fascinating interview. But he mentioned that his wife, was working in the retirement village here, and lots of old folk on their deathbeds were very unsure of their salvation. and that concerned him. And that's ultimately what Des was trying to offer, is people
Yeah.
some assurance.
Yeah.
And the other thing he said was that he discovered a letter from Neil Wilson to Pearson. Was Pearson a previous GC
Yeah.
president?
Yeah.
Where they were pretty clear that they wanted to kind of shut Des down, not so much on what he was teaching, but because they felt that the church would have the question and authority of Ellen White put into jeopardy. And so what you're saying there about identity, if a church's identity is wrapped up in a huge kind of authoritarian, not authoritarian, but a authoritative view of Ellen White, and you're shaking that a bit, you're shaking a whole church's identity. So no wonder they
Yes.
bristled.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's another thing when it comes to perceptions, and this is why, because all of my life I was exposed to people wanting to come and debate my father, knocking at the door, always wanting to grab him after a talk to run their thoughts past him and sometimes argue the point with him. The futility of arguing became apparent to me at a very young age.
Right.
And that's why I wasn't particularly interested in debating things, because here's the thing. Human beings are meaning makers, but we're not capable of absorbing all the relevant data that you need in order to make meaning.
Yeah.
We are only finite human beings, so we filter that data.
Yeah.
And we filter out what's relevant to our fears and desires.
Mm.
And fear and desire are two sides of the same coin. So that drives what we see. So I don't know if in your day, but when I was a kid, we used to draw pictures by numbers, where you'd have to join the dots and follow the numerical order of the dots, and it would form a picture on the page.
Yep.
And so we're always doing that. We're making meaning out of pieces of data, but we're only seeing pieces of data that are particularly relevant to what we love or what we fear. And we're missing the rest of the picture. And you can imagine, if you gave a page with a series of dots on it, people would make different pictures out of that data. So I always question, why do people perceive certain things to mean certain things and other people perceive it differently? And it's driven by our experiences, it's driven by our wounds, it's driven by what we love and fear as to what is relevant, what stands out for us.
And not only that, what you've just said before that has switched on a bit of a light, that confirmation bias protects the identity. So as soon as you cannot then even have a rational discussion about the belief, because the person is suddenly going, hang on, you're challenging my identity. No matter how much you say, no, I want to talk about your fears and I want to talk about why you believe it. You're in essence, you actually are challenging their identity.
But then you've got to add to that the layer of complexity that some people don't like to be wrong.
Yeah.
And there's a matter of identity to be right.
Yeah.
And so arguing with people is really futile.
Yeah. Now, ironically, your current kind of job is to do with dispute resolution, and I want to come to that later, but I just wanted to point out that there's an irony there with the sense of it's almost futile to help an individual come to some conclusions, but when it's connected to the health of individuals connecting with other people, relationships, you do need to have someone come in and say, let me help resolve this dispute. And I'm really keen to unpack that a little bit later in our conversation, in relation to maybe how you would have advised certain players of that time period with building better relationships. But we'll come back to that later. But it's interesting to touch on it now because it's pointing to what we're talking about with identity. So bring us now from the dissertation, the manuscript, the 991 pages. which was I don't know if you got to see Steve Ferguson's interview, but it's a fascinating one as well, because he's a lawyer, and he's written a couple of articles from the perspective of one, if he was a lawyer at the time of Glacier View, would he have adjudicated it as an unfair trial? But he's also written about it from a perspective of trying to understand what Des was teaching were from that document. And so he's read the whole 991 pages.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I think he's only about 34 or something, but that's a really interesting interview to check out as well. So back to that time, he's written the book. Tell us about what happens next, from your memory with leading up to actually Glacier View, what you were doing at the time, a little bit around that as well.
So I was back in Australia and just getting snippets from Jill and Dad by phone and by email. So not email, by letter. So I wasn't really involved in the nitty gritty of it all. And I didn't really care about it because I thought it was an argument that I thought my father was right, and I didn't think that there was a lot of hope in changing ideas and changing tradition. So,
and you at this time would have called yourself not even a Christian?
yeah, not even a Christian.
Yeah, so it even pales even more because of that.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until I became a Christian that I started to really want to set the record straight if I could. So I connected with Trevor Lloyd, who's always been a great friend of my father's. We used to play ping pong with him as children, and I had so much respect for him. And so he and I used to talk, and he would help me craft a letter, like I wrote to Falkenberg in 1996. So I felt that there'd been huge injustice in the way that it had been dealt with, and so I wanted to help. But as my efforts increased over time, and as I became, a lawyer, and then did training as a mediator, and then got interested in peacemaking and biblical peacemaking, and was one of the co-founders of Peacewives. And doing more and more of that, I really wanted to try to bring about a mediation between my father and the church, so that all of the missing pieces of data could be put on the table, and so that perhaps new meaning could emerge for the parties, and they could understand one another. And the assurance of the gospel sets you free from putting your identity on something other than God. And that's the only way to open people's eyes and help them hear, is when they have that assurance of the gospel. Otherwise, they're a slave to whatever they depend upon for identity. And so, so I don't know if you want me to skip ahead, Peter, to 2010 when I went to the Washington, D.C.
I'm interested, yes, definitely. Just before you jump there, can you tell us what were some of the missing pieces you may have found at the time? And also, why do you think at the time, I think Des had someone in the legal realm say that he possibly could have taken them to court for unfair dismissal. Why do you think he didn't?
He would never do that. He would never do that, because that's taking a Christian brother to court.
Yeah.
And God is more powerful than any human being. So if he's lost his position, God will sustain him and bring good out of it. So it's just like the story of Joseph. They may have meant it for ill, but God meant it for good, and he was confident that God was in it. So he wasn't going to go running after money or anything like that. He wasn't a lover of money.
No.
So when you said missing pieces, what were some of the missing? So I started, so as a typical lawyer, I want all the facts. And I know I've only gotten one side of the story, and so I'm trying to understand the other perspective. So I'm talking to people and, talk to Norm Young and picking his brains. And I started talking to a number of people to try to get more facts on the table.
And were you documenting as well, writing notes, doing recordings at all?
I
Just getting an impression.
yeah, no, typical lawyer, wrote notes and all of that, but I wasn't recording anything. It was just my own research. I was doing it so that maybe I could help as a mediator because I knew my dad, and I thought that maybe I could bring the parties together.
Okay.
So I met some of his quote unquote enemies and
Yeah.
people
Wow.
who didn't appreciate him.
And
I
what
think
era was this? What years were you saying you were putting the pieces together?
So I started getting interested in peacemaking at the end of 2000.
Right. Okay.
And I did my first course in 2002, mediation course at Bond University.
Right.
So it was an increasing interest during that time, but I probably only started seeking people out and interviewing them, talking to them in 2009, probably onwards, trying to understand the story and seeing if I could bring about reconciliation.
Yeah, boy, that's a fascinating journey and some of the fascinating conversations you must have had. So you talked to Norm. Can you mention some names of people you talked to and what kind of you came away thinking about what they'd said?
Yeah, I haven't reviewed my notes of this for many, many, many years. Well, I haven't reviewed it at all. I just kept the notes in the hope that I could do something. So, you know, I know that I met with Jeff Yulden on one occasion. I know that I talked to Arthur Patrick. Lots and lots of conversations with Trevor Lloyd, Barry Oliver, Bill Johnson. So I flew to Washington, D.C. and put myself in a hotel near the airport for 5 days so I could have ongoing conversations with him while he was talking to Jan Paulison, who was the conference president at the time, who knew that I'd flown into Washington.
Wow.
Just for that reason. I wasn't sightseeing or doing anything. I was just there to speak to Bill and his wife and to explore whether we could do something.
Wow.
And the upshot of it was that I needed to take it up with Barry Oliver, who was the president of Australasia. So Trevor Lloyd drove me to the conference office in Sydney, and I went in and had a meeting with him. And
so they referred it back to more, you need to talk to the employers of the time.
Yes.
And because Barry was the SPD president, he represented those folk. Sorry to interrupt, and I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, but it's just fascinating.
And Barry gave me a lovely, warm hearing. I mean, there were tears in his eyes. He was destroyed. He was, hurt by the break in relationship. I could just tell by the look on his face. And he said that he would raise it with the conference presidents and see what could be done. And so we had a number of conversations. But see, here's the thing that I didn't understand at that point. Because as you know, after leaving the bar in 2016, I went to Philadelphia and I did a master's in counselling and worked as a counsellor over there until the end of last year. And it was only from doing all of that that I realised that when there's conflict and disagreement, it's so tempting, and it's usually the case, that it becomes personal. So think about the coronavirus, right? There is one camp that thinks you should lock everything down and keep people safe. And there's another camp that thinks, well, you should just let herd immunity develop and keep the economy going so the economy can care for people. And so you have two different camps, and it's probably multiple camps, but just for the sake of this example, can you see how easy it would be to say that somebody who supported the lockdown method of dealing with responding to the virus was a particular sort of person, and how someone who supports the economy keep going must be hard-hearted and lacking compassion for human lives, So you see how easy it is to translate the area of conflict into reflecting on them personally.
Yeah.
So as soon as you have conflict, you usually have negative assumptions about the other side.
Yeah, and you polarize.
And the longer the conflict goes on for, the deeper entrenched the neural pathways become, and the goat tracks, you know, the brain only goes in those grooves. And so my father was getting blamed for all sorts of things. He was being blamed for the 180 other ministers who left. And yet from a legal point of view, there was a break in the chain of causation there. That was, while my father might have raised the issue forum meeting in 1979, there were a lot of intervening events that brought that about that had nothing to do with him. There was no, but people had demonized him by 2010, and there was a great deal of antagonism towards him because he was attacking the church. And so it would then need Christian love and thinking the best of one another and coming together with a gracious, humble, teachable spirit, which is what you need in order for a conflict to be resolved. You need at least one party to have a teachable, humble spirit, and willing to listen, so that they can get a different view of their opponent. But that just wasn't able to happen. They weren't willing to come together. My father was willing, but Barry couldn't get any traction.
Couldn't get the traction. Boy, I'd love to.
And lots of other people tried. I mean, I know Arthur Patrick tried. I know Trevor Lloyd tried. As you know, going right back to 1983, I think there were meetings in San Francisco to try to resolve things, but it would have been good if they'd had an experienced mediator to facilitate those meetings, to understand both sides, see where the sticking points were, and come up with strategies to move parties towards one another.
What was your father thinking during this time as you bounced ideas off him of your progress?
He just said, don't get your hopes up. You know, he just knew that it was an impossible task. He didn't think they'd want to listen. They were too invested in their position. Why do you think, just from that perspective of conflict resolution, and I've often said to people that one of the reasons I'm wanting to talk about this is to bring out about healing, not the kind of resolution that you're talking about, but some kind of healing and resolution and a sense of going, well, we've really unpacked that topic. Let's do this, or whatever people decide for their own lives. Why do you think, this is the question, that lots of more liberal progressive Adventists are willing to kind of speak about this now, but it's almost impossible for me to get any church employee to speak and share their thoughts on it? Very good question. Very good question. And I'm not the person who can answer it because I haven't been part of the organisation since about 1975, I guess. Wow. So I've been a long time gone.
And did you take your name off the roll back then? Just a quick divergent.
I don't know. I didn't take any active steps that I'm aware of. So.
Sorry to interrupt. Back
to
what you were saying.
So this is the thing, isn't it? When someone's livelihood depends upon what they believe, that really changes the way they view the facts. Even subconsciously, you'd be wanting to stretch things so it fitted in with your employer's view. Because subconsciously, that would be a huge pull to not see it another way. And so it's very dangerous to be having paid employees deciding on things. And so I think there's a huge fear. That would be pretty normal. Fear about losing their livelihoods. And my dad got that. He understood that. And he never encouraged people to leave because he knows that they've got families to support. And
he said that to me actually when I was up there visiting and doing that first podcast interview, that there's no way he was ever trying to say to people, look, you should leave and make a stand. He really understood compassionately that people, they're relying on paying mortgages. And so, again, from me, I've got no judgment on people staying and being quiet for whatever reason. But just from a sociological perspective, it interests me that I can get lots of retired Liberal progressives to speak, but I can't get any current employees to speak truly openly about what I know they think behind the scenes.
Yeah, and that's always been the case ever since 1980.
Mm.
And that's part of the problem. You know, if everyone had gotten together and stood up together, we could have gotten somewhere. But so I just want to be clear that I don't have all the facts, remember?
Oh,
I haven't, like you, I haven't talked to the people who really know on the other side, but I have a lot of questions that I was hoping I could put on the table to find answers to. For example, they said that Glacier View was all about trying to bring about unity in a situation where my father had raised an issue that had created disunity. They said that that was the reason for it. So when all the delegates arrived at their consensus statement, do you think it's odd that they didn't actually ask my father to respond and say, well, what do you think? He was never publicly asked to respond to what did he think. It was read out, he was there, it was voted on, and no one turned to him and said, well, what do you think, Des? And the fact of the matter is, he was joyful. He said, I can live with this.
Yeah. Now, who did he say that to?
He said that to Jill, and Luke was sitting on the other side, and he said it to anyone who asked him privately, but he was never asked to publicly say, well, what do you think of the consensus statement? He was over the moon because he thought they had moved sufficiently towards him that he could work with that and work within that in the hope that there would be further movement going forward. So if the whole reason is unity, and yet they don't ask the person who's on the other side of the fence, can you live with this? I think that's odd. And then here's the other thing that I have a question about. Why is it that informally Neil Wilson asked 6 people to jot down where they thought Des differed from the orthodox position? That was never a product of Glacier View. That little
the 10-pointer
around that, the 10-point statement. I don't think I don't have all the information, but I don't think it was an official committee where they got together, and I think it was done at short notice, just halfway through the session, like clutching at straws sort of thing. So why did all the delegates go home thinking, oh well, we got this consensus statement together, and someone told me that Des can live with it, so that sounds good. And then there's this little group after everyone's gone who whips out the 10-point statement, which they had said would not be used to judge anyone. And my father was asked to change his position on those 10 points and a few other things, or leave. So I've got that question. And my father was shown a handwritten document written by Parmenter, dated the 15th of August. What he was shown in that meeting, one of the things that he was required to do was to damn publicly a Christian brother. My father said he's not going to get into personalities. And even though he doesn't agree with everything he's saying, he has a purpose in stirring up debate, and that's a good thing, gets everyone talking. So because he wouldn't damn him, that was another reason why they wanted him to go, because they thought there was collusion, but there was no collusion with this other person. So I'm curious as to why the document that appeared in the 1980 Ministry magazine, which is the letter dated the 15th of August 1980, is different to the handwritten one that was shown to my father and Jill.
Wow.
So I have questions, and I stand to be corrected that there might be a perfectly good explanation for all of these things. I've been a lawyer long enough to know that it just takes one missing fact to make all the other facts look totally different than what they were before you knew that missing fact. So I'm just saying these are the missing facts that I'd really like to, I would love for you to get someone on here who can speak and give me information that I don't know.
I'm trying.
Please keep it up.
Um,
I mean, the Ministry magazine, why did they not say that Des Ford was actually in consensus with the consensus document, that he could live with it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they publish something like that? Instead, they said that the delegates rejected his position,
Yeah.
and I don't know that that's an accurate way of summarising the outcome, but
No.
I stand to be corrected.
Who was the editor of Ministry magazine when that article came out?
I couldn't tell you, I'm afraid. Maybe it was Spangler, was it?
Right.
Who I remember meeting in 1965, because I love my dad so much. I was his little shadow, and when he and Spangler went up into the Wattakins for a walk during the Avondale Summer School, I tagged along as in the back seat listening to them chat, and they were friends. They were friends.
And Spangler's still alive, isn't he?
No.
He's passed, right. Right. Someone's just asked a question I just look across to the monitor every now and again. It's not that I'm not listening. And they've just said, can you unpack a little bit more the reconciliation efforts for Des by Bill Johnson? And were you involved with that, or is that something that he was doing separately, or did it not happen?
So I haven't heard. You've interviewed Bill, haven't you? And I haven't listened to that. So I'm wondering if the person who's asking you is asking you about my time with Bill, or is this something else that Bill's done? So I can't talk about what Bill's done. I can
talk on your connection with Bill when you approached him about these missing pieces. And
so we must have been writing to one another, and so I said, well, I've got to go to Missouri in April 2010. I'll come over to Washington DC. I'll plan to have 5 days with you, see what we can do. And I think there was some big meeting of the at the general conference, so a number of players were in town. I think Barry Oliver was in town at that time, and obviously Paulson was in town. And so I was really hoping, and I think Bill was hoping, that something could have come of that. That was April 2010. And so I met with Bill maybe 4 times during those 5 days, and he was talking to Paulson, according to what Bill told me, and what came back was that they couldn't do anything, and that I needed to speak with Barry when I got back to Australia, which is what I did. So it didn't get anywhere. Didn't get anywhere in Washington DC. About 4 or 5 meetings with Bill. He was very kind. Took me to his home for a meal. Took me out with his wife to walk in a park, because I mean I was just in a hotel for those 5 days, hoping that something could be done while I was in DC, to meet with people, to start preparing for a mediation. But
did you feel palmed off, or did you feel that they genuinely couldn't do anything? Or did you feel...
Bill would know. I was disappointed. I was really disappointed that if Barry was in town then and others were in town, that we couldn't get together. And
sounds like the big palm off to me.
And here's this. My impression and recollection is that Bill was surprised to learn that my father agreed and said that he could live with the consensus statement. I don't think Bill knew that.
Well, I think a lot of them were made aware that it was. I think they were told he didn't agree, but it was the 10-point, not the consensus.
And I think Bill had put so much effort and work into that consensus statement. I think he was probably disappointed when he heard about the 10-point. I don't even know if he knew about that Friday evening meeting after everyone went home, because there were some gaps. So you might want to ask him. But I thought
I'll have to re-listen to the interview I did with him, because I know we did touch on that sort of stuff. But now that I know so much more.
So my recollection of our time together in DC was that he didn't really know what had gone wrong. He didn't know about what had happened at the Friday afternoon in terms of the 10-point. But I could be totally wrong about that. I could be totally wrong, Peter.
It's like when we were talking, everyone I've spoken to that kind of knows about the moving of your dad's memorial service off Adventist soil is kind of shocked about it. And yet when I talk to conservatives off the record, I have lots of conversations with Liberal employees off the record and lots of off the record conversations with Conservatives. And the Conservatives are like, we can totally understand why he wasn't there. That's an insult to us to have a memorial with Des Ford. Des was going to disrupt the church, and if people had followed Des' teachings, they would have eventually given up on Ellen White. They would have eventually given up in the investigative journalism. They'd eventually not believe in 1844. So they saw the Des getting fired as a wonderful thing because the trajectory of what would have happened to Adventism that they assume would have happened has been headed off at the pass.
I don't know why they say that, because my father loves Ellen White. He thinks that he named me after her.
I know.
I mean, he thinks she's great. He thinks she's not a prophet. She's a great minister and a great writer, but she didn't get it right all the time.
Yeah.
So my father used to say, a book is like a shop. You don't have to buy everything that's in it. But he loves lots of stuff from her books.
I think that
he has continued to believe what he has always believed. His trajectory and mine haven't gone off the rails. It's just the joy of knowing that we're right with God right now.
Yeah.
Is able to blossom.
They have, I guess, their identity wrapped up in the knowledge that Ellen White was a prophet, that something supernatural did happen October 22, 1844. And so the letters I get, emails, messages behind the scenes after, because quite a few Liberal leaders have said, we don't believe, on this show, this platform, whatever we call it, that they don't believe anything supernatural happened that night, 1844. They believe it was providential. Fine, you can take that path if you want. But my point is that the Conservatives that then write to me are shocked that these leaders who have never said it all their lives are saying it now. They're in shock that they could be an Adventist and not believe something supernatural happened that night. And they believe that if Des had stayed in the church, that eventually every Adventist would be teaching that and okay with it. Do you think that potentially could have been the case?
And what's the harm? I mean, so what?
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Well, that's what I think.
You know, C.S. Lewis talks about mere Christianity, the center of the gospel, which we should all be rallying around. What's really important,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
No one's going to know until God returns, Christ returns, and God explains all of that. No one's going to really know. So why would you let it build a barrier now in relationships?
I know.
Why?
And why? Like, why would God place in a prediction that we are told in the Bible not to pursue predictions of end-time events? Why nestle within that prediction a gem that you're supposed to discover, something you shouldn't have been seeking, a new investigative judgment knowledge about the sanctuary that's going to have lots of meaning to the end times? Like, it's just, why?
Yeah, it's quite
just
specific.
say
it's not for us to know the dates.
Yeah, you're just better to wake up October 22 and go, oh, whoops, we made a mistake. And for people, but for some reason, the Conservatives do not want to have that as a mistake.
And is it identity?
And it might be
because how can it be relevant?
Yeah.
Christ died for us. That was finished.
Yeah, at the cross.
He took our sins. He took our sins. Isn't that great? Nothing more needed to to happen. That's all that we need to.
Yeah.
No.
And then I think your father would have then gone, okay, well, we can move on with that, and maybe a lot of Adventist scholars and pastors and leaders and the 180 in Australia that were kind of purged, maybe the church could have become this very vibrant kind of place where unity was found through diversity, not through conformity.
Yes. Wow.
And here we are on the very doorstep of the compliance document, seeking unity through conformity. And if I was the PR guy writing the compliance document, I would not have used the word compliance. Adventists are usually good at kind of treading softly using clever words. um, Someone has written, Bill Johnson was happy to know Des Ford accepted the consensus statement, which he largely wrote.
Yeah,
He was surprised to know the 10-point plan had been written. So maybe
yeah,
this person, I think, might be commenting on the interview.
yeah. That's my impression, and I don't think he. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's my impression of our
impression.
meeting.
And someone else has added, Ford told an ad hoc committee chaired by the GC president on the Friday afternoon after Glacier View that he was pleased with the consensus statement
Yes,
and that he could live with it.
that's right.
So he
But he
did
was
get
but he was never asked to announce it to the 115 delegates, and the whole point was to build unity. So wouldn't that have been a lovely thing?
and what an opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, for him to stand up and say, "Yeah, I can live with this. I can work within this." But he was never invited to do that. That suggests to me, as a lawyer, my little antenna is up and thinking, well, therefore there must have been this plan B.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, 100%.
This
And that,
after everyone goes home, we'll have this little informal meeting where we'll use something else other
yeah.
than the consensus statement.
And if like you say, like, and that was chaired by the president at the time, he should have gone, oh, you're okay with the consensus document? Awesome. Get on the phone to everybody. Hey guys, it's all good. He does agree with that, but no, he knew that by agreeing to the consensus document, that wouldn't get rid of him. And so he had to wheel out this other little thing, and in many ways abuse the trust of people like Norm Young, who were asked to write for it,
Yeah,
and make Norm look like he'd kind of done harm to Des.
yeah,
I think he was manipulated and thrown under the bus personally.
yeah.
Um,
And in 2015, when Dad and I were down there, and Jill, to see you for those
yeah,
meetings, we had lunch with Norm Young. So
yeah.
my dad didn't ever take badly the
No,
fact
I
that he
think,
was involved in the 10 points.
yeah,
But here's the funny thing: on Friday evening, because we're dealing with administrators and not theologians, they didn't realize that the consensus statement, on 12 points at least, had moved towards Dad's position. And one guy said that if he'd known that, he wouldn't have voted for it. He said that on the Friday evening. But here's the thing: because they weren't theologians, they even cavilled with my father's statement that on 12 aspects of the consensus statement, it had moved towards his position. They even argued that and said he was wrong. Well, Dad knows what he believes, and he knows. He got all excited. You could tell it on his face that these things were said, so he could live with he's the one. He's the guy that's got the 2 PhDs and studied under F.F. Bruce, and
mm.
and these administrators are arguing the point with him. Anyway,
How much of this do you think's got to do with not just politics, but interconnected dynasties and families? And like if you dig a bit deeper to some of the names, the detractors on Liberal and Conservative side, and I won't mention names at this stage, but there's some familial connections. Were they kind of trying to protect some power base there as well as being political to protect the authority of Ellen White, do you think?
well, there's blood ties. If you've gone back generations and your family's been traditional Adventist for generations, there's a very great pressure on you to protect what the family has held dear all those generations.
Hmm.
So that's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then, so I think there is politics. I think there's, blood thicker than water, and
Yeah.
you've got to protect what's been dear to the family. And I know that some families have extracted promises from the coming generations that they'll hold true to the
Wow.
Adventist church. And so they're protecting something that has been very precious to
Yeah.
people in their family that they're very close to. So
And I think
I
even,
understand it. I understand that it's human
yeah,
nature.
that human nature side of it, yeah. And we're not saying this is an Adventist thing, and I'm not saying it's a nepotistic thing. I know I've got very good friends that are part of big Adventist church families, and I don't doubt their authentic nature and character 1 second. I'm just saying that in some cases, if you're faced with a political dilemma and you have family ties, you may slip along those lines to support instead of maybe doing the right thing.
It makes it, again, very difficult. Your perceptions are so controlled. In other words, what you're looking for, you're subconsciously looking for evidence to support your position,
That
and
confirmation
you're
bias.
not wanting to see what
Yeah.
goes against it. You're just not in a position. You're
Yeah.
not sufficiently objective.
One of the hard exercises I put myself through about 6-7 years ago was I'd force myself to watch equal amount of CNN and Fox News. And after a year or so, like every day, I'm talking about probably at least an hour a day, I will watch equal amounts of both to this day, and have done for 6-7 years. After a while, you start to kind of find truth somewhere in the middle, because neither of them are really giving you an unbiased opinion. And it's a shock initially to go, oh, hang on, the good guys are also giving a bit of a biased view too, who you've perceived as the good guys.
Yes.
And it's a really difficult thing to do. I really struggled the first 12 months because I wanted to agree with everything CNN said, and I wanted to hate Fox. And gradually I, kind of found the answers in the middle, and tried to find the news, not the bias,
Yes. Yes.
And I think some of the concerned brethren were quite nasty and mean about what they were doing, and I think they noticed that some of the potential supporters of Des, or some of the politicians, I think and I'm not going to go there, this is stuff I'm not going to enter into or even ask you to comment, I'm just making a statement, that I know that they used certain practices or fear tactics to these leaders, where they would say, we're going to destroy your reputation if you support Des. And that's all I'll say. But there's some pretty nasty tactics behind the scenes that put some of the political people on the spot, where they thought, boy, I've got to get rid of Des or help getting rid of Des, or my reputation and family's reputation is going to be affected.
It's so sad when people think that the end justifies the means, because Scripture says the opposite.
Yeah.
It says love in action. What does that look like in this situation when there's someone you disagree with?
And you think of the essence, the core teachings of Jesus. I love, since leaving the church myself, just reading the 4 Gospels and trying to read them without the Adventist lens. And you just read it and you go, okay, here's a gem, here's another gem. And by the end of the 4 Gospels, you kind of put together these quite nice teachings of Christ that stand alone through all eras.
Yeah.
And then you think, why the supposed remnant church, or the church for the last days, or a church that holds itself up as having the truth, is not practicing these gems of Christ's teachings at an administrative level.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing I've pondered with regards to your dad, and interesting on you saying that in that time period you wouldn't have even called yourself a Christian. When I started initially questioning these things myself, I felt like there was a bit of a slippery slope kind of thing happening for my own journey, and I won't go into that. But when I first met your dad, I expected him to have gone further down the slippery slope than he had.
He hasn't gone down it at all. I don't think he did at all.
He seemed to have not questioned his faith.
No.
and in many ways kept together a lot of his beliefs in Adventism.
All of it, all of them, except
What?
the ones that he disagreed with in the beginning,
Yeah.
1844. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Because a lot of, and I have known in these interviews, a lot of people that have PhD, scholars, um, they they kind of only will deconstruct to a certain point. You sound like you deconstructed yourself right out of it and then built back, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do. Um, why do you think some of these guys that have these that raise questions but are able to kind of stop at a certain point?
Yeah, I don't know. We're all complex human beings, so
Yeah,
a
and that's just really just
a conversation would be great with them. But you're quite right that I threw it all out, and by living the way I thought life would work best, when I found that that didn't work, did I then start putting back all the pieces, and I put them all back right to where my dad was. There's nothing that he and I we were on the same page with everything.
mm,
So and it wasn't out of just conformity. It was the reasons that made sense to him made sense to me when I was
mm,
ready to listen.
mm.
So
Again, that's that whole idea of going on your own path and your own journey. Yeah, it's just interested me, and it's a bit of a side issue, but it's interested me where you'll talk to some people who deconstruct and love asking why, and they'll come to a point where they stop, and others will just continue on and go do the full Richard Dawkins kind of thing. And I'm just fascinated by
it can be
thinking.
fear. It's either fear or identity, or there's multiple explanations for
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
or maybe, yeah, I don't know.
It is a bit of an aside. We could have a whole other podcast on that one. um, can you tell me again, back to the Glacier view, and then I want to kind of come to what you're doing now and unpack a little bit about that. But just briefly, I like to bring things back to the feeling kind of stuff. How do you feel your father was treated? And how did you feel for him as a daughter concerned for his well-being during those years?
I was so wanting him to have an apology before he passed away. That was my driving thing, because I felt like what he loved so much had been taken away from him. He loved teaching at Avondale and at PUC. He loved teaching students scripture, and he missed that terribly to the day he died. And I thought that he had been harshly treated, even though I recognized I didn't have all the story. But I've been searching for the other side of the story to make sense of it. Never been able to find anything where he was wrong or anything that he'd done wrong. I thought that he had acted as a Christian gentleman throughout. He wasn't willing to compromise his beliefs unless he was given good reasons, and he wasn't given any good reasons. And he wrote it all out there in a book. No one wrote back with a book and said, here are the
Yeah,
answers.
yeah,
They wrote something back that was really pathetic,
yeah,
hugely pathetic. So I'm left with the conclusion that he was harshly treated,
yeah,
and I really wanted to bring some honor and an apology, and for there to be some reconciliation before he died, and that didn't happen.
didn't happen.
And so,
What?
as you know, I wasn't going to even talk on this show because I needed to put it behind me.
Yeah,
That the opportunity's passed now.
yeah,
We've got to wait for heaven for all things to be put right.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it just kills me to see someone who loved people so much,
yeah,
wanted to do what was right, loved the Lord,
yeah,
to see him marginalized and thought of in that way, demonized and
yeah,
blamed for things that weren't his.
yeah.
But it didn't make him
Cruel.
bitter. And it didn't make me bitter, and it hasn't made Jill bitter, but
Yeah.
it's made us very sad.
Yeah. And it was mean. No matter which way you look at it, it was just harsh. And whether you look at it from a sociological perspective, where you think, oh, that's just how sectarian movements eventually act, like it took 400 years for Galileo to get any kind of an apology from the church. And I love that your dad was just buoyant all the way through it.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, well, whatever.
He knew he wasn't going to get an
Yeah.
apology, and he thought I was wasting my time, but he was willing to play along with me and answer all my questions and process what I was doing. And yeah.
One of the things I'm so glad that you and Jill have accepted to be on the program, and Jill's helping me behind the scenes with getting people on the program, and so is Lance, is that I believe we are creating something very unique and special here. This is a document that can be used 100 years from now, 50 years from now, 5 years from now, tomorrow, as a resource where people can kind of dip back in and hear a lot of people's thoughts and views on it. And I think to have yours and Jill's story shared is a really important addition to that document. And regardless of the flack that I get from all sides for doing it, I'm just going to soldier on as long as I can, because I think of this document as being something valuable for people to look back on, and valuable because I think people will understand why Des should have received an apology, why you fought for an apology, and why I think one day he will get an apology. I'll be dead and gone maybe, but
And me too. But I would love people to know what he was like, because what he was like publicly, he was like privately.
And just pausing for a moment there as we talk about what Des was like privately and publicly. And Elenne was just saying he was the same in both scenarios. I just want to thank today's sponsor for this show. It's really wonderful to have people willing to provide some financial support, particularly with getting season 2 out there. There are 86 interviews. We're at number 33 as we look back and replay this season into the public sphere for the first time. They were on Facebook. Facebook has deleted them all. And so we're slowly making this very important series available for everyone to see on YouTube, where it can be kept publicly for as long as YouTube remains or offers the deals they do. So thank you for people like LeBron McBride, who has sponsored today's program. You can check out his book, Coming Back to Faith, if you go to lebronmcbride.com. Coming Back to Faith. Thank you very much, LeBron McBride, for sponsoring today's program. Back to Elenne, and there's not too much more to go of today's show. It's a slightly shorter one than some of the season 2 episodes, which reached 3, 4, nearly 5 hours, some of those interviews. And as we were just talking, I believe and hope that this series provides a resource that supports the legacy of Des Ford and reveals how badly he was treated, and how they still have not apologized, how they still try to write him out of the history books of Adventism. And yet Glacier View, August 1980, was a landmark event. Some have called 1980 and 1888 the 2 greatest schisms, events to have happened within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So this is important. And I hope that these shows become a resource that people can look to for years and years to come. And yeah, back to this interview with Elenne. Very powerful.
You saw the authentic person, and he was a person who loved deeply. Like, even when he was in America and trying to do his PhD and preach on the weekends and do his coursework, because Avondale needed him back by January 61. So he was working really hard, but us kids never had the impression that he was busy. He would sit on my bed and help me exercise my eyes because I had one weak muscle by me having to follow his finger around. So he would just sit there calmly doing that with me every night. Or when my mother went out for typing classes, we'd climb all over him like a human playground, and he would throw us up in the air, and he would give us rides on his back. And so he was this lovely, available, playful, fun father who never got angry. So when I went over to the States in 2016 to do the Masters, I came home a number of times at the end of every semester practically, but I came home for Christmas in 2018. And as soon as I arrived, he said to me, Elenne, there's something wrong with me. I don't know what it is, but I think it's going to take me out. And I just want you to know, you to go back, and I'd finished my master's, but I hadn't finished my internship. I'd just started the counselling internship, which was really important to embed the master's. And he said, you must go back. Don't come home for my funeral. I won't be here, so there's no point. And he must have said it 20 times because he knew that it would be hard for me to do.
Yeah.
And every day we would have at least 3 walks together after I got home in December 2018. And we had a lovely day, Boxing Day, with his granddaughter came to visit, and she interviewed him and I filmed it, and he was very upbeat with her. The very next day he got really sick, and they found out that he'd had this lung condition for years associated with the syndrome he doesn't even know that he had. He was never diagnosed with it, but Jill and I think that that's what it was. But so we knew he was dying by January 7, and my flight was booked to return January 11. And he would keep saying to me, you got to go back, even though I could have been a real help to Jill in looking after him and keeping him home. Like, they did have to put him in a respite place for 6 or 8 days. And I got on the Skype to him and I said, Daddy, do you want me to come home? Because if I'm there, we can get you out of there and you can be at home at Shelley Beach, which he would have loved. He said, no, you stay where you are. So how selfless is that?
Yeah.
And so the day before I left, when I knew it was the last time I'd see him, I wrote a note of what happened that morning, just so that I could keep it. So I'll just read you some of this. So 5 minutes past 9 in the morning, on the 10th of January, I walked to his bed and I touched him and I said, and he opened his eyes, and you know what he said? He said, you look lovely. And I said, Dad, how are you feeling? And he said, I could be worse, but I could be better. And I said, Dad, I'm supposed to be flying to America tomorrow. I said, do you think I should go? And he said, oh, yes, like that. So I read to him some messages that people had sent me for him. And I read him an email that someone had sent me, and I read that. And he took his last antibiotic that morning. And I said to him, Daddy, do you want some chocolate or something with the antibiotic? And he said, no. I said, do you want some scrambled eggs? No. Do you want some mashed potatoes? No. And he just closed his eyes and he just kept drifting in and out of sleep. Jill told me that all he'd had was a teaspoon of honey at 2 a.m. and a teaspoon of jam with his pill that he'd had just before he came. and that he hadn't eaten anything for a number of days. I'd been away visiting my aunt before I left, hardly eating anything because the antibiotics were just so strong and he was just feeling so sick. And yet he would only think of me. No, you go back there. I'll be all right. I mean, I just couldn't believe that sort of love, that selfless, humble love. And he would assure me, when he found out on January 7 that he was dying, he went, hooray, both arms up in the air. Hooray! He was definitely excited because he felt that his work on earth was done, and he'd been looking forward to seeing Jesus for a long time. He was genuinely happy. So I just want people to know that the sort of man that he is was selfless, loving, encouraging, and humble. But not everyone knows that. They demonized him because they believe rumors. Such a shame. Oh, but they treated Christ like that, didn't they, Peter? They accused him of being a demon, the Son of God, the Saviour. So we shouldn't be surprised. And he wasn't. So he was the sun in my solar system. I can't go to the cemetery to see his grave because I want to dig him up and take him away. It's really crazy, isn't it? But I just can't bear to think that he's lying there in the cold, even though he's not there. I can't bear it. But I know I'm going to see him in the morning. And that's what's important. I know that. Here's the funny thing. Often when I'm faced with a decision, I know exactly what my father would say to me from all those years of seeking his wisdom. And the thing that he'd say about it, he'd say, Elenne, pray about it. God will show you. And I would never have attached great importance to those words if I hadn't seen them demonstrated in his own life. So they mean everything to me now. So I often hear his voice. Elenne, just pray about it. God will show you. So it's a huge comfort to me when I know what he would say. So he pointed me to Christ and not to himself. And he tried to strengthen me for life, to help me to see that I can be safe. Even if I'm an orphan, I can be safe, even if life is hard, because God is there. He's my shepherd. When I was 4 years of age, he bought this beautiful painting of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, carrying a lamb with the flock behind him, and I still have that now. So that's what he wanted me to know. There is a right way of living, and the Lord will lead me into paths of righteousness. He will lead me into the right path because he's my shepherd and he's my daddy and I'm not an orphan. So he gave me resilience for life. Mm. I'm so grateful for the confidence that he gave me. I'm so grateful to him. I thank God every day for him and what he modeled for me. So for someone like that to be poorly treated, I just wanted to bring an apology to him. But it wasn't to be, and that's all right because he didn't need it. He said he didn't need it.
You might have to talk for me. I can't.
You're probably talking too much, Peter.
Yeah, I can't really speak at the moment.
Well, I'll tell you another story that I love. when I fell off my bicycle and had concussion, and I was unconscious for probably an hour till the ambulance came and took me. All I felt like eating the next day was cucumbers. That's all I wanted was cucumbers for some reason, because I guess I was feeling nauseous. And we lived on the edge of Lake Macquarie, and there was dirt road out the front of our house. It wasn't even sealed, and there were no shops for miles, but there used to be a greengrocer that came around in a truck. My dad got on his bicycle and he cycled all around the lake for hours looking for that greengrocer until he found it. And it had 2 little cucumbers left, and he brought them back to me. I mean, there is nothing that he wouldn't do for us kids. We felt so loved. And yet he also helped us to be adventurous. I remember that we paddled across the lake with him once to the other side from where we lived. And I said to my father, I said, Dad, do you think I can swim across the lake and swim home? He said, yeah, you can do that. So my brother and I started swimming, and he paddled the boat back. But guess what he did? As soon as he got to the shore, he swam out to meet us.
Oh, wow.
So he was the kind of dad that, yes, you can do this. He used to write that in the aerograms to me when I was studying law. He said to me, Elenne, you're going to do really well in law school because your brain's brand new. I haven't used it yet. And he'd write, you can do it on the top of all of his letters to me. Each letter, you can do it, you can do it. And that's the sort of guy he was. With the Lord, you can do anything.
Yeah. He had a beautiful strength, didn't he?
Yes.
A reassuring strength.
Yes.
In the interview we just had with Harry, we were talking about some of this time period, and I think he used the word timid, that maybe some of these guys that could have stood up for Des were a bit timid. And I don't want to cast aspersion on anyone there, because, you know, like, Des didn't, and who are we to know and judge their situation? But I think that if people want to see the kind of Adventism that is a legacy of Des's contribution to Adventism, there's a time fast approaching where people need to follow that example of Des, of just, you know, not being timid and really speaking up. And maybe that's a little bit over the hill and out of sight at the moment, but I think a lot of us have within us the ability to not be timid and to speak up and to speak strongly in support of the kind of ideals of Adventism that Des stood for. And so I just really encourage people that are watching to not be the timid type, you know, when that time comes.
Believing that God can care for us, that He's our shepherd, that no one can mark up our life, because the Lord has a plan for our lives and He protects that. I just love that fact that we have a bulletproof life. No one can stuff it up. No one can touch us. Because look at Scripture. There's just so many stories of the way the Lord provides, and the Lord overrules bad things that happen. They put Joseph in a pit, and God had a plan for his life, and that pit wasn't going to stop it. And it's the same with Dad.
Within, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Within some of the interviews that I've had, and I shouldn't start mentioning names because I'll forget people, but people like Ross Cole and John Den and David Thiel and John Rosier, and again, I shouldn't have started saying names, but in the inspiration they got from Des, I can see that shining through. And there was a moment in the interview I did with John Rosier where he started sharing his love of the gospel. Like, we kind of were talking about Des and Glacier View, and he was saying, well, Des means this to me, and Des would say this. And then he kind of just started not preaching, but he just started sharing his love of the gospel, and I felt goosebumps because he'd grasped this kind of special teaching that I think Des has managed to infuse in so many. And as I interview people that really loved the influence that Des had on their lives, this joy starts coming up within them. And that's the kind of Adventism that I like to hear people present, and it's because of people like your dad, that championed this idea of the true meaning of love found within the teachings of Christ.
And it wasn't a sooky love. It wasn't a fluffy love. It wasn't a. It was a. It was a love within the right boundaries.
Yeah. Well, it was firm. It had boundaries, like you say. It requires discipline.
Yeah.
It requires control, self-control. It requires the ability to forgive yourself, to acknowledge that we're human, we make mistakes, to try and judge others way less than we do. And it's not an easy path. And Christ, cleared the temple with his a whip and a sandal. So it's not just an easy little happy lovey-dovey thing when you get yourself involved in the messy teachings of Christ.
Yeah, asking ourselves, what does love look like in this situation? Is a powerful question to reorient our heart. What does love look like in this situation? And it's a wisdom question sometimes, and sometimes it's a moral question. And there's no doubt about it that the scriptures give us a road book for how life works best.
Yeah.
We can't trust ourselves because we're too invested in outcomes. Our perceptions are warped, we're self-deceived. So we need a road book that's apart from ourselves and what we think is the right way to live. We cannot trust ourselves.
Yeah. And that's why I guess it's evident that throughout history there's Lao Tzu, there's Buddha, there's Christ, there's people that emerge constantly trying to give people a framework and a path because they've perhaps discovered some of these truths. And I think your dad grasped that truth and saw where it could bring light into darkness.
Yeah, because we condemn ourselves all the time. He used to say to me that Martin Luther said legalism is the oil in our bones. We're always feeling that we're not good enough, that we've failed, that we're disappointed, don't live up to our own expectations. So what do? You reach for a bottle, you reach for fun, you go shopping, you're always trying to anesthetize yourself from that. So the gospel is such good news that we're forgiven and there's nothing more to be done. It's done. It's in the past. It's about someone else. It truly is the only way that life works. Everything else will make us a slave. Everything else but Christ will make us a slave.
I want to touch on your current work, but it feels like we've entered this little sacred space that I kind of...
you don't need to say anything about it. It's all good.
We can maybe have a part two.
It's okay. No, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about my father.
Well, so. I was meaning with relationship to how you might have, with the knowledge you have now and the work you do now, how maybe you could have been an advocate back then, but I feel like we've indirectly covered that.
Yeah.
And this beautiful, the last few minutes of thoughts that you've shared are just, very moving.
Thank you for the opportunity, Peter. I really appreciate it. I just want to do it for the sake of my dad. So thank you.
Thank you, Elenne.
Thank you, Peter.
And we'll look forward to crossing paths again.
As my dad would say, see you here, there, or in the air. Thank you, Peter.
We'll leave it there. And
thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow, what a powerful conversation interview there with Elenne Ford. And it was very moving and so fitting to hear the things that she said about her dad. And what an incredible human Des Ford was. And may his legacy live on. Those listening to the podcast, this is now back into 2025. And maybe some of you are watching 20 years on from now. And it's 2045. Am I still doing the show? Who knows? I want to thank very much LeBron McBride for sponsoring today's program. If you would like to check out his book, Coming Back to Faith, you can on his website, lebronmcbride.com. And thank you very much. Really appreciated your support, LeBron, and the many of you who have supported this channel. And if you would like to sponsor an episode, please let me know. This series is going fast. We will be at number 86 before we know it. I try and replay one episode a week if I can, sometimes more. As I mentioned, I will not officially be running SDAQ&A until the 6th or 7th of January. And I'm going to take a little break and spend time with my gorgeous daughters and family. And I look forward to getting back in touch with you guys in the new year. There will be a lot of very interesting interviews ahead. We aren't slowing down. In fact, we are picking up steam. Is that the right word? Picking up speed? Increasing the steam? Who knows? I really enjoy doing the programs, and thank you for those who support what I'm doing. If you'd like to go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. Over the next few weeks, your financial support would still be greatly appreciated as I go about editing and putting together a lot of the season 2 ready to upload to YouTube. I will still be putting a lot of time in over the next few weeks. Keep an eye out also. I may randomly come on at any given moment and do a show, a shorter show. But there's some content that's pretty important right now to do with Ty Gibson and his belief that the church is failing. The SDA Church claims to have 22 million members, but in reality, there's about 6,000 actually practicing members. And I think he is saying that the Adventist Church teachings are good, even the more historic ones, but that it needs better PR. I might be wrong, but I want to do a show on that. I want to do a show on last generation theology, because I am constantly amazed when I see progressives write on Facebook that they are shocked. How can Adventists possibly believe in last generation theology? How is this possible with the source material, Ellen White, Adventist doctrine? How on earth can people misunderstand Adventism? And Mark Finley has just done a program where he comes out in support of last generation theology. And he is at the very top of SDA leadership in the world. And people are in shock. Whereas I feel that Adventist progressives, please wake up. Tap, tap, tap. Your special gem of theology that in many ways Des Ford encapsulated is a different theology. And your hope that you can reclaim Adventism is a very naive one. You can't reclaim it. It's something you never had, and you can't revise it because at its core DNA, it has a special message to tell the world in these last days before the imminent return. It is so special a message that it can't be messed with. So get out of their hair. Leave them to it. Start your own thing, Progressive Adventists. I'll get behind it. Well, until next time, everybody, I may see you, I may not, before Christmas, and we'll cross paths. Just a quick plug for Good News Unlimited. I think that has come up on the screen there. I'm pretty sure that Elenne Ford is involved with Good News Fellowship to some degree. If I scroll up, you can see our very good friend there, Eliezer Gonzalez, who has been on the show. And I hope to have him back on the show, actually, pretty soon. So if you are watching, Eliezer, let's get in touch. In the new year, I hope to interview... What were their names again? If they're watching, that they'll say, I'm not coming on the show if you forget who we are. Oh, goodness me. Oh, yes, Dr. Warren Trenchard and Don McAdams. How could I forget? So those guys, Warren, I'm hoping will talk a little bit about investigative judgment, Adventist asset or liability. And he also wrote an incredible book on Fred Veltman's study of Ellen White's plagiarism, which is a really good read. I've done a few shows on it already, but this will be from the horse's mouth. Warren Trenchard in the new year, and Donald McAdams, who in many ways was ahead of his time and knew all about the issues that Walter Ray was stumbling across, but promised the GC to keep quiet about it. And when they asked Walter Ray to keep quiet about it, Walter Ray said, no way, and released the white lie. Don McAdams knew all that stuff, probably before even Walter Ray. So we're going to chat with him as well, and hopefully it will be called A Review of the Ellen White Revisionist History since 1970. So please join me in the new year. Have a brilliant Christmas. Thanks for being good friends and hanging out with me every week. And we'll look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thanks for the comments. I'm just reading some of them. Hey, let's go out as we have recently. I've got with... Oh, no, I'm going to go out on a little positive note first. I'm going to play for you a song that I wrote called Standing at the Cross. And you might be able to listen to it over the Christmas period. Until then, see you later, everybody.
Wrap your arms around me, don't ever let me go, hold me to you, so I can see the light of day. You tell me that you love me, in the words that Jesus spoke, I'm safe in your arms, till kingdom come. We are standing at the with our hands raised to our God. We sing hallelujah, we sing hallelujah to our God. you, Lord of heaven. I sing your holy name. I'm closer to you, so I can dwell within your heart. You were there before me. You rescued me from shame. You died on the cross, gave of your life, and rose again. We are standing at the cross with our hands raised to our God. We sing hallelujah, we sing hallelujah to our God. All creation worships you. Through all the ages it's been true. We are standing at the cross with our hands raised to our God. We sing hallelujah, 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 we sing hallelujah to our God. Oh, hallelujah. Wrap your arms around me.
And God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.